You like today?
Nice and sunny, I
Oh,
think.
good.
Yeah. So we're running. I'm Tyler Price, and I have with me today my Aunt Diane, who is an amazing lady, don't you think?
Oh, I think.
Yeah.
No.
And we're just going to drive around and ask her some questions about her and her family and just kind of documenting some of this. So kicking it off, you grew up in a family of 5 brothers.
4 brothers.
4 brothers.
And I was the only
And you were the only girl. So what was it like being the favorite child then?
I was spoiled.
Yeah?
You want to know some reasons why I think I was spoiled?
Well, let's hear it, yeah.
Okay. I'd come home from some kind of an activity or a date or whatever, and I'd wake my mom up and she'd put rollers in my hair so that it looked perfect every day. That was one of the reasons.
Yeah.
But my dad had a soft heart for me.
Yeah, well, I think I was only blessed or cursed, however you want to look at it, with 1 son and 3 daughters, and we definitely care about our daughters. We care about our sons too, but
Right.
but they, rub some dirt on it, get after it. But anyway, so you were born, and I didn't know this till we were talking last night. I never knew my dad lived in California. You were born in California.
I was born in California. I'm not sure what. Oh, my mom had 2 sisters that lived there,
Yeah.
and I think that's how they ended up going there. But both Keith and I were born in California, and I think maybe Claire. I'm not positive.
But to begin with, your family, your grandparents were in the Weston, Preston area. So
Yes.
my grandparents, your parents grew up in that area.
Right.
And thankfully, Grandpa
left.
Price was not about staying there, right?
Right.
Because at what age did he, and maybe tell the story, he just one day just said, I'm done with this place, and
I don't know exactly why they moved out of that.
But before they moved, he like jumped on a train and...
Oh yeah, before he was out of high school, he jumped on a train with a friend and took off. He wasn't much for school.
Yeah, neither am I.
But he did come back and finish with his brother Eugene.
Yeah. But then at what age were they married, Grandma and Grandpa, your parents?
I think they were about 21.
Okay. So he jumped on a train, I think he went to California, didn't he, for a minute?
I don't know where he ended up.
Wherever.
Yeah.
And then came back because my dad says because he was in love with Grandma. Was that the story, do you think?
I don't know that he knew her then.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't think he knew her.
But something was calling him back to Idaho.
Right.
And then, but again, I'm grateful now living here in Idaho. I love it here, but I see the multi-generational families that are running dairies and running farms.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that's not the Price clan.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah.
So am I.
But so Grandma and Grandpa, for that matter, were big on their kids going to college.
Oh, they were, and neither of them had more than a high school certificate, but they worked hard and helped us as much as they could, and each of us had jobs while we were in college. Over the summer, we'd save our money, and we worked while we went to school too. I learned how to work hard from my parents because they were hard workers.
Well, they grew up farming at some level, right?
Right.
So what were some of the things that maybe they did? Because again, they had to put the 5 kids through, or help put 5 kids through college. So what were things that they did to help?
My mom worked at, it was like a Sprouse Rights or whatever store, and she just worked full time, and by that time we were old enough to be on our own and whatnot, so they just both worked, and they were never in debt.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I really admired about him. they wanted something, they saved for it and they paid for it.
So if you don't mind me asking, what year were you born?
I was born in 1945.
1945.
And I think Keith was born in 47, but every one of us are close to 2 years apart.
Yeah. So they would have grown up then, or born maybe during the Great Depression era.
Yep.
And so there was a different mindset of not leveraging, not being in debt,
Yep.
working hard, all that.
Right.
And that served you well.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
And I learned that it was important to save and put something away, and my kids aren't real great at that.
Well, the world's a little different now,
Right.
to say the least. So,
Right.
Okay, so you recall living in California then in your
Oh,
youth?
yeah. And my mom was home. She was home when we were young. And she looked out the window one day. Keith liked to play cops and robbers, or cowboys. It was more cowboys. And he had his chaps and his holster and all that.
Probably still has that. So,
yeah, probably still has it. But she looked out the window and noticed he was hanging by a rope from a tree. There was a box, and he and his friends were playing, and you know how they take the outlaw and they hang him.
Yeah. And
But
Keith was the outlaw?
Yeah, I guess so. But it broke just as she came out.
Well.
So she had some very frightening experiences raising 4 boys.
Yeah, well, that might explain some of Keith a little bit too. Maybe he suffered some brain damage with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. We love Keith. He's great. He's great.
Yep.
So then, at what age and what was Grandpa doing for work at that point when you were living in California?
He was driving those big transport trucks, and he drove from California up to the Northwest, and he loved it up there, and that's when he and my mom decided they wanted to try something different than California.
So then put the family in your car, truck, or whatever, and up to Portland, or is that where you landed first? Was it Portland? Okay.
Outside of Portland, kind of Gresham area.
Oh, I just moved my daughter to Gresham, so there you go. Yeah. So, and then what was Grandpa doing for work at that point? Was he still driving a truck?
No, he started working for a guy, and I don't know how he knew him or if he just went in and talked to this guy, but he had a gas station and worked on cars and whatnot, and he did welding for him. My dad had a lot of interests, and he was capable of doing a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I think that again, I wish I would have been an auto mechanic. Instead I went to college and
I don't think all kids need to go to college.
No,
they need some kind of training so they can take care of themselves and have a good future ahead. And technical schools and learning trades, I think, is important.
So yeah, and I'm a big fan of trades. So, but you then, at what age were you when you moved to Portland?
In 2nd grade.
2nd grade. So really, most of your life then was spent in the Northwest.
Yes.
Or really, from there, did you ever leave? I guess you did live in Canada for a minute too.
That was a long time later, but I stayed in Portland until I went to BYU and to school, and every one of my brothers and I all graduated from BYU.
Yeah.
So I don't think the cost of it was nearly what it is today.
Yeah, and it's probably still supplemented a little bit, but so then you growing up in Portland, how was that? What did you love about growing up in the Northwest, because you're still there?
Yeah, I felt it was safe, and I made friends wherever I went, and so did my brothers. And you know, my brothers, every one of them had a paper route from the time they were old enough, and they would go early in the morning before school and deliver never had any problem with people, bothering them early in the morning.
Right.
And it was just a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. And what were things that the family did, maybe vacations or traditions or anything like that, or all of the above?
Our vacations were camping.
Yeah.
And we went to Wickiup Reservoir somewhere there in Oregon, and they fished, and my dad would fix the fish and fry it, so we ate it right there on the fire, and it was great.
That's the good living right there.
And they let me bring somebody with me some of the time because it was all boys.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I recall going, Grandpa and Grandma, and you might have been there as well, going to Spirit Lake before Mount St. Helens.
Oh, yeah. We camped at Spirit Lake, fished at Spirit Lake. They had a church, girls' camp, or a camp that the church would rent for girls' camp at Spirit Lake, and it was just a fun place to be. Yeah.
No, I was, I guess, grateful seeing that before it was destroyed by the volcano.
I know.
So then you, at some point though, you guys moved from Gresham more down into Portland.
Well, we were only there in a motel, all 5 kids and my parents. And Dawn, I believe it was, got sick, kind of like with rheumatic fever or something. And so we stayed in there until they found a house in Portland. And we never really lived in Gresham. We were just, it was a stopover.
Yeah. I think that's the case for my daughter and son-in-law too. I don't know that they're... Anyway, Gresham seems nice, but...
well, it's built up a lot from when I was growing up.
And then, which high school did you attend?
We all attended Franklin High School. And it was primarily white. There was a family of Jones, and one of the boys was a famous basketball player.
Yeah,
and I was always a student leader, and my freshman year, Nick was their youngest. He was president, and I was secretary or something. But they were a great family. It's more mixed and more black than it used to be.
So back in the day, my dad had Jazz tickets, and the Jazz were playing the Portland Trail Blazers in the NBA series. It wasn't the championship, and I was with Grandpa, and these were great tickets. They were right behind the Jazz bench, and that Jones, what was his name? That was
Steve.
Steve. Okay, was he called Chipper maybe, or I don't know why I thought that. Anyway, but
it was Steve.
Steve was there because he did commentating, and they were on the court, and Grandpa said, "Oh, there's Steve Jones. He grew up in the neighborhood." And I was just thinking, yeah, whatever. That guy gets done talking with whoever he's talking to, gets up, walks across the basketball court, Lyle Price, and my Grandpa's wearing a Trailblazers hat, which was killing me first off, and then the Trailblazers beat the Jazz that night. But yeah, I remember Grandpa saying, yeah, he grew up in the neighborhood, and I was like, yeah, whatever, that guy doesn't know you. And he spotted him and walked across, so yeah.
It was a great family. They had one sister, and the rest were boys.
Yeah.
And I think there were 3 boys.
Yeah. So then you went to Franklin. My dad went to Franklin. I don't know why I thought he went to a different high school.
All of us graduated from Franklin High School.
He took us on a drive before he passed around the neighborhood, and we saw the house that you
grew up.
So was that the house that when you moved from the motel into that you lived?
Oh no, we lived in a 2-story, wide stairway, good banister you could slide down, which was what they did most of the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we didn't own that home.
Yeah.
It was a rental. And then they saved and whatnot, and we bought the home on Franklin Street.
Yeah. If only family still owned that one. I bet that's worth a little bit at this point. But,
yeah.
And then, but what was maybe one of your memories that you recall are a funny memory with the family or with your siblings?
Let's see.
Putting you on the spot, right?
Yeah, there were lots of fun times, and my brothers could be pretty rough with me. And I remember once, I thought it was Dawn, but Claire or Keith, I'm not sure which one, said it was them. We had a tussle, and they were kind of angry at me, and they threw me into the door, and it had a glass door, and it broke, and we begged my mother to get that fixed before my dad got home, but she didn't, and she used that term, wait till your dad gets home, because that my brothers growing up, once they got bigger than her and stronger than her, if she tried to discipline them, they would hold her hands behind her back and make it difficult, and it would end peacefully.
Yes.
But she said a few words in
I'm
there. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure wait till your dad gets home was enough to put a little bit of fear of God in you at the same time.
Yeah, and then in high school, all the girls liked to come and stay with me because I had all those cute brothers.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, that's something for people to know, that they were cute at one point, right?
Yeah, they were. They were good. And even now, one of my best high school friends, we get together every few months, has a home in New Zealand, and I went to visit her there. She says, Keith is still cute. Because they haven't seen the others. You know, they're away from there. But Keith went with me to a grade school reunion, because we went in Portland at that time, and I think they're still doing this.
Wow.
They didn't have a middle school. You went K-8 all at one school and then went to high school. And anyway, it was, and my mom was the greatest baker. Rolls that melt in your mouth, and she'd do them for church activities, for dinners at home, and had a little oven. I don't know how she did it, but she worked her tail off, and she would make cookies, because she worked out at Newberry's off 82nd in Portland, and she would put them in these big mayonnaise jars that they'd savor at the commissary, and then she would put them in the same place in a drawer underneath her closet, and they would always go and eat them, and she'd get so irritated when she thought she had. So then she started freezing them, but they didn't care. They ate them frozen or whatever.
That's one thing I remember. If we were up there for either a Christmas or a Thanksgiving, she would have mountains of these rolls that I'd probably eat a solid 30 rolls.
I know.
And they were, and her cookie that is kind of everybody remembers, and I would eat it, and it's like I didn't love them, but I still ate them but there was those raisin-filled cookies. I think you have to have a certain love for that cookie, and I do, but Sheila
and I tried to make some and send it to them while they were on one of their missions, and they were so hard to do, we ended up keeping them and eating them.
Yeah, my sister Paisley will make them occasionally.
One thing she made, I don't know if you had that cookie, she has a gumdrop recipe.
Yep, I remember that one.
Yeah, she'd cut the gumdrops up and whatnot, and it was good. I gave all Grandma's recipes to Kendall, and she was supposed to make a book that I could give to all the cousins and stuff, so I'm going to find out from Sheila or Keith and go through her stuff and find it, so eventually I can give you those recipes.
Yeah, no, that would be fun.
Yep.
So you went to Franklin High School, and that is still a very beautiful school.
Yeah, it's been remodeled, and it's like a college campus.
It really is. I mean, and there's a statue of Ben Franklin that I think Claire had some doing to get there, right?
He told us when we were together in Meridian when he worked for the bank downtown Portland. They were getting rid of, they wanted to get that statue out of by that building, and Claire said, I'm sure Franklin would love it. And the only way to get it out of there, they had to break windows on the building and then take a lift, a helicopter, and move it over to Franklin High School.
Wow.
And that's where it is.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they put the time and the money into that. Break the windows to get it out of there.
And a helicopter. That seems like some engineering right there. So.
I know.
So what was something that you really admired about your mother, my grandmother, Price?
She was a hard worker, and she was fair, but most of the time. If we didn't agree with her, she didn't change her mind.
No.
She stood by her convictions, but she was a hard worker, and everybody liked my mom.
Yeah.
Up to the day she died. When I was taking care of her, she was in a different ward than I was, and I tried to get her to go with me to my ward. No way. Her friends were in her ward, so I would take her, and then I would go to my own ward too.
Yeah.
Because her friends were there, and she always asked me before she, in the months and years before she passed away, how many people came to different people's funeral, and she wanted to make sure she had a lot of people at her funeral.
Well,
and she did.
Yeah. When Grandpa passed, I called her, and she almost was like scolding him. She's like, that was not the deal.
Oh, no.
I was supposed to go, and then he was going to stop dialysis, and they had a whole plan. Yep. And so I'm sure that on the other side, when there was a reunion, that she
told him
probably
about
let him have it a little bit.
When they called 911, a police come, and the fire department, and all that. And one of the policemen was a young guy member of the church, and he was very helpful to Natalie and I, who, I had Natalie. We got him off the chair down on the floor, and she tried mouth to mouth, and he was gone.
Yeah.
But when Grandma looked at him, she said he had a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And Cherise said it was probably the air that Natalie put in. And Natalie said all I could see was Grandpa's face for the longest time.
Really?
And that was hard on her.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate her efforts at least.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So then, what was something? So Grandma, you loved her hard work, and she was a very kind woman. What was it about Grandpa Price that is fond memory or something that you loved learning from him?
Having 4 boys, he was always a scoutmaster or in the scouting program, went to all the camps, and he made sure that his boys participated in stuff like that. And not having a college education, he worked his tail off to give them as much money as they needed if they needed something. And my dad Grandpa was also liked by everyone.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody that didn't like either one of them.
Yeah. No, and I, again, my childhood, when we'd come up for the summer at times, that was like one of my favorite things to look forward to, was spending time at their house. So, okay, so then after high school, you went to BYU. Yeah. Because again, there was a strong emphasis by both of them that their kids go to college.
Right.
And why do you think that was, first off?
Well, they wanted us to have a good life and be able to take care of our families, and things were becoming more increasingly higher priced, and they wanted to make sure that we were, and also it was important that we went to church, and I don't remember my brothers or myself not wanting to get up and go to church. You know?
See.
And there, all of us we're active, except Keith is not active. But anyway, kids.
Yeah.
They look after Dave and I, and all my brother's kids look after them. So I think we learned that parents deserve to be, what's the word I want?
Respected, yeah.
Yeah, respected. What are they doing here?
This is a farmer's market. Maybe we'll come by and go through it here in just a minute.
Okay.
But coming to your point, the church is a big part of our heritage.
Right.
Our forefathers and mothers, for that matter, left Denmark, left England, left Wales, traveled and moved in the Price line and Larson's line, really to a terrible place in the United States as far as I'm concerned. I love Idaho, but when they were there was nothing there. Weston and Preston, some of the worst ground that you could imagine living at. And they went and they made it work. And so that's something that I'm super grateful for, was those pioneers that did cross and were stuck on the plains, and people had to come and save them, right?
Right.
And I think that irrespective of where people land with going to church or not going to church, I would hope that people would still have this as part of your identity still, even if you're not active in the church, is that the church's values and the things that we're taught
and
are
I
a big
don't think
reason why.
any of my kids feel that it wasn't good for them growing up.
Yeah. No, and you know, again, my kids too aren't necessarily all going to church, but they're the values of the still are there. It's still, and it's, you know, it's always there at the same time.
Right.
I think that there's things that have happened in history and whatnot that make it where people look at it a little sideways, but the good outweighs the bad.
That's right.
And sometimes we have to go with that. And I believe that the Savior is where the foundation is. But
that's right.
And I'm grateful for grandparents on both sides that knew that and that taught my dad and mom important aspects of living that have gone on even to my children.
Right.
So
I think that's great.
Yeah.
The kids all know how I feel, and I go to the temple regularly, and my husband isn't real active. He'll go if I ask him to, but most of the time not. And they respect me, and when they need help, like someone's ill or someone's hurt, they always call me and say, your prayers work, Grandma. And you know, the power of the Holy Ghost is really important to me, and I feel like I'm guided every day through the power of the priesthood, and like I had a blessing before I came here because of some tests I had, and I knew I was going to be okay, and I was.
Yeah, well, and I'm grateful that we love our family. Our families drive us crazy at times. Is that fair? But I'm grateful that you and Cherise took time to stop in small backwoods Idaho and
I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and Cherise, I'm glad she brought it up, and I went right for it. So you've been great here.
Well, you're amazing. I always loved you growing up and still do love you. So okay, so then you go to BYU. Sorry.
Well, your dad and your mom were at BYU after your dad's mission. He met your mom. And you know, before his mission, he had a girlfriend named Bernie. I think it was Bernadette. And he and a friend took the train to Salt Lake to the mission home, and she had a jar of M&Ms for every day he was going to be gone, and chased the train crying. It wasn't very long that she was marrying a returned missionary. But anyway, he met your mom, and they lived in a downstairs apartment, and Taft was the baby, and I babysat Taft when he was little. Yeah.
And then you got your teaching your degree was in education. Is
Right.
that
It
correct?
was a composite two. I don't know what word I want, but anyway, elementary ed and
Right.
family relations.
And then after graduating, you moved where? Like,
I moved to Portland because I had a roommate that was also going to teach, and we moved and stayed with my parents until we found an apartment. And in the meanwhile, I met the kid's dad, and so I ended up staying with my mom and dad, and then she found an apartment and met a dental student that was a member of the church. But unfortunately, Roz, she was a roommate of Roz before me, met with her. It's been a long time now, but she said her dad was a state president in Pendleton, Oregon, and very active family. And she said her husband first found out the church wasn't true, and it took her a while, and then she came to that conclusion.
yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I have a different opinion of
Yeah.
how it goes.
And I think that happens even in my own family. I've had that recent discussion, and it's like, well, I can support your decision and you can support mine, and we can still be
Right.
family, right?
Right.
So,
Family or family.
Yeah.
And unconditional love.
yeah.
That was another thing. My parents, they had unconditional love. And if somebody, and my brothers made some mistakes.
Yeah.
And I made some mistakes.
I doubt that, but
Yeah, but anyway, I always knew my parents loved me.
yeah. And that's a big deal,
Yeah, it
because
is.
when the world is feeding you a sandwich that is disgusting and you're eating it, to know that that your family loves you or your parents love
That's
you.
right.
Just-
That's right.
My dad, I still have the last message that on my phone that he left me because I didn't answer when he called that time.
Oh,
But he used to call me every week.
he called me too.
Yeah. Well, he was sitting around, didn't have much going on,
I
right?
know.
So he had to
I
do
know.
something, but he filled his time, and those calls are missed.
Yeah.
And again, I still have that.
My
that
kids
message.
loved your dad, and he always talked to Sharice and Price and everybody.
Yeah.
Oh,
How long did you? How many years were you a school teacher?
33 years. I started in Portland 1 year, and then went back to school for the kids' dad to finish, and I taught in South Jordan 1 year, and then I started having my kids and stayed out until until I ended up in a divorce, and went back to Portland, and I taught 31 years in Longview.
So, for a number of years, you're a single mom, 3 kids,
Yeah.
teaching.
So my family was so supportive.
Yeah.
My brothers and my parents, and like Claire would go to all Price's activities. That's another thing. My dad went to every activity that Price was in, and all the high school football games. And my dad wasn't perfect, and I know things about my dad that he wasn't. Everybody has something.
Right.
They're not perfect in all things, but I loved him.
Well, him and Grandma were very proud of your kids because I used to hear about Price's wrestling and
Oh, yeah.
just everything, and
They were so funny to watch when he wrestled, and Grandma was right up there in the stands too. She was going like this,
Yeah.
moving her shoulders around and kind of grunting as if she could win the match and pin the guy for him.
Yeah. so then but then you met Dave at some point.
Yeah, after I came back, I think I was back there a couple of years when I met him, and I really wasn't sure I wanted to get married, and he was married previous but had no children. His first wife had an abortion because they were having some issues, and so he never had any children. And the best thing for Dave, he said the best thing he's ever done in his life is to help produce Natalie.
Natalie, yeah.
And she's spoiled, and Sharice will tell you, she's had an easier road in some things.
In some things, no one gets out of life having it all be easy. And if they did, they got cheated. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it was never, okay, I'm a single mom. I don't know what I'm gonna do. You had the support of your family, and you had your skills, and you just made it work.
I had to go back and recertify, so I went to Portland and Portland State and stayed with Claire and Roz during the week and took classes, and Grandma and Grandpa took care of the kids, and then I would come home. And Dave was a teacher when we met, and I talked him into when Keith and Sheila were leaving, it was either you buy it or we'll sell it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And vending, you have problems with handling money.
Yeah.
Is such a temptation to people. So we bought it, but it was a hard road for Dave.
Yeah.
But he pretty well gave it away at the end because the machines were all old.
Yeah.
And whatever, and the kid that got it just ran it to the ground. But the reason he gave it away was Longview Fiber wouldn't give him anybody more than a 2-year contract, and who's going to pay big bucks for a business?
Yeah, that you don't know if the biggest client's going to be there or not. Yeah. No, my dad told me a story about a time they had ice cream machines. Grandpa had ice cream machines.
Yeah.
And he went to this bowling alley, and I guess you had to unplug the ice cream machine to fill it or something. I forget. I mean, there was some reason. And then he plugs it back in and leaves. And then the bowling alley calls Grandpa up and says, "Hey, there's ice cream melting all over the place."
Oh.
And so Grandpa called my dad, or whatever. They didn't obviously have cell phones. They got a hold of my dad. Said, "Hey, you messed this up. Go clean that machine out." And at the same time, my dad didn't know it, but Grandpa went to the bowling alley, probably to watch to see if my dad did it right.
Right.
But after my dad cleaned it up, restocked it, plugged the machine in and left, Grandpa sat there and some guy unplugged the machine for the second time. And he got a little bit of the price wrath. Although I think the price wrath really comes from Grandma.
Yeah, so do I.
But Grandpa, I guess, went after that guy a little bit. So
yeah,
anyway.
he would, and he believed in being fair.
Yeah. But what did you work in the vending machine business? I mean, I know you guys owned it, but when you were younger,
I would teach all day, and then I'd come there and do book work. And count the money every week and make the deposit.
Yeah.
And so, what was nice is the kids could be down there, and they loved the vending.
That was my favorite
warehouse, all that candy.
We would show up and get a few candies, and he would have some old school pinball or some other machines that we'd play a little bit, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
It was.
I actually had a couple vending machines for a while, and I told Grandpa that, and he goes, "Why the hell would you want to do that?" That was his comment.
I could understand him saying that.
Well, good. What is something then that you would hope for because you have grandchildren.
Oh yeah, and I've got
great grandchildren.
I have 4 great grandchildren.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I want them to always try their best.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it has to be the top notch of everybody around them, but if they're putting the effort in to try to do their best and show respect to people.
Yeah. I think being kind and being respectful go a long way. So
yep.
No, and I remember a few decades back being in Washington and spending some time with grandma and grandpa and having this, asking questions to them and thinking, oh, I got to document this, and then of course never doing it. But you've done some of that.
I've done some of that, and it spurs me on that when I get back, I'm going to get those tapes out and record them on paper on the computer and make sure everybody gets a copy. I wished I just got busy with teaching and taking care of them, and
that's the
whatever.
thing is, life gets in the way, and then these memories and stories get forgotten.
His answers were really comical, some of them, because and Grandma was pretty rigid on her answers, but I loved the one where he said he didn't register at the same as Mom because he wanted to cancel her vote.
He wanted to find out who she was voting for and vote the opposite way.
And he wasn't.
I know, but still, I don't know. Sometimes I think I got a little bit of his humor in me, and I'll just say something just to watch the reaction sometimes. So, which isn't always a good thing, but it's funny at the same time. But well, I appreciate you, and thanks for riding around in the bug. And
I appreciate you. This has been a wonderful trip. If this was the only place we'd gone, I would think I had a great trip.
Well, don't tell everyone, because I'm not as nice. When my mom comes, I roll out the red carpet for her too, but only the people that, no, I'm just kidding. I love everybody. But I did treat you a little better, so
Price wants to come here.
Well, good. I'd love to see him. I haven't talked with him. And this is the thing, it's like family, we get going in these directions in life, and when you have big events happen, you start realizing what's important, and for me it always comes back to family. And again, for family that isn't active in the church, I don't care. I love you irrespective. And I'm gonna go and do what I do, but I would say to kind of build on what you said about, you know, the trying your best, and that I would say keep prayer in what you do. Prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it, but prayer matters.
Kendra, Celeste's daughter, oldest daughter, prays with her little girl, and we always have prayer on our meals when all of us are together and whatever. But they always kind of turn to me to do all the prayer. Not that I'm perfect.
I don't know. You're pretty perfect to me, so.
Oh, well, I'll keep it like that.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, and we'll end here, and I'll get this posted on YouTube and share it with family, and we'll let people see it, and hopefully others start. Because I think sometimes we also don't believe that we're that interesting. You're very interesting to me, and the experiences you've had, and the places you've been, and the things you've done. So I'm grateful.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
All right.